When you partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. I got a pretty exciting guest on here. Something I came across not too long ago, and it kind of baffles me that I didn't think about it beforehand. But guest is Craig Ganssel, and he is from FarmWave. And Craig was nice enough to come on and talk about what's going on there. The idea of AI in farming is getting to be a bigger and bigger deal. So Craig, I appreciate you taking time to be on the podcast, man.
Oh, Casey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. So, Craig, before we get started, let's just talk about your background, where you grew up, kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, so not a farm kid.
Yeah, you and me both got something common.
Just be honest. I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania, a town called Bethlehem. Most notably, people know Bethlehem Steel Corporation.
Sure.
So I'm a steel kid. Grew up right, real close to New Jersey, right between New York City and Philadelphia. And I went in the military straight out of high school. Did that for 8 years. Was going to do it for life, but they found a problem with my heart. So after 8 years, they're like, "You're done. Go home." And then I started working at Verizon. I was in telecom for 15 years. All kinds of engineering, routing, switching, Cisco certification, like kind of hardware tech stack stuff. And
sure.
Started my own company while I was still at Verizon, building Wi-Fi networks on large scale, high density stuff. So college campuses, schools, put Wi-Fi over a small city center to test IoT, that kind of thing. And then got involved with some work that Google was doing at Google X with, if you remember, Google Glass.
Sure.
And connected with a guy here in Atlanta named Bruce, who is still a good friend today. And we looked at some applications in ag because he was a farm kid from Missouri. And we took it to a John Deere developers conference and just kind of, I saw an avenue where people were asking questions about the device and things that they thought were important to do with it, right? Use their voice, take a picture, hands-free, send it to somebody. And not being a farm kid, I'm like, why would you do that? And it was really, in that conversation was really about crop scouting, right? Like looking at disease, pest, that kind of thing, taking a picture, sending it to somebody. And I was like, well, what if you took a picture and it just told you what you were looking at? And that's kind of how it all started. So originally we first built an AI to work on Google Glass and look for disease and pest and weed pressure and like count tomatoes on a vine or grape clusters in a vineyard or kernels on an ear of corn. And that was the one that we repurposed in 2019 and looked at how do we put this on machinery and started learning about harvest loss from farmers, those that do it, those that don't, those that sometimes do it,
Sure.
How long it takes, what's involved. And we thought, what if we put camera sensors on the combine, on the header and the combine? So not just combine loss, but header loss as well, and literally count the kernels in real time and tell a farmer how much they're losing and where it's coming from on the machine. And that's kind of that's where FarmWave is today.
Yeah. So the header loss part of it is, excuse me, the header loss part of it is one of those deals where you hear people talk about it, but you never really think about it much, and you kind of just like how much is coming out of the back of the machine, how much are we losing there, and the idea of coupling those two things together, where you're managing the front and the back of the machine and the loss of stuff that comes through it is I mean, I can't believe I didn't even correlate those two things together until I started watching your videos here. But it makes a lot of sense how much grain loss that you're seeing throughout the back machine. But I mean, how much are you losing before you even gets into the machine? And that's such a key part to your technology.
Yeah, it's and it's dependent on crop, right? Like
Sure.
header loss better in beans, and even in wheat, seeing like full head loss in wheat. Corn, kind of tough, right? There's a lot of trash. And unless you have a ton of loss, which we have some case studies that's happened. There was a lot of loss on the header because they were either chopping too low, they were getting a ton of shatter, whatever it might be, and it'll pick that up. But there currently is no other loss detection on the header. The existing sensors and combines really focus on the combine loss. And so here we are able to look at both in multiple crops.
Yeah. And that's what I like about your product, is that it's not corn centric, soybean centric, whatever. You have a broad base of stuff that's out there. And if you look at the crop models that you have available right now, you have soybeans, peanuts, and peanuts is a weird one because that's such a tough one because a lot of AI, they're having trouble trying to differentiate it between a dirt clod and an actual peanut shell, and that's such a integral part. So looking like, just while I'm on that one, let's just talk about that for a minute. So how are you programming your machine to tell that where other people are having such an issue with that?
Yeah, well, on peanut harvesters, there is no loss technology today. So header and rear, very similar like method to looking at like the crop, like we do row crops. It's looking, so peanuts, it's two-stage, right? Because they go through on the digger and they turn them over to dry them out. And when they turn them over, anything that breaks off the branch and falls out into the row, they won't get that when the harvester comes through. So that's the first identification of loss. Then when they go through and harvest, anything that they don't pick up that's left behind, that's loss as well. So can we sometimes pick up like the broad side of a peanut shell and it's just the shell and not the actual peanuts? Sure, that could happen. Same thing with it coming out of the rear. But it doesn't happen that often. And, that's where I think it's having an understanding of what AI is doing for you as far as the validation and accuracy, right? If you're looking for a validation of, well, the very spot that FarmWave took a picture, I want to go back and hand count. And if I hand count and look at the picture and FarmWave's off by 3 kernels, and I just go, oh, FarmWave doesn't work, then you're kind of looking at it all wrong. It's not about that. It's about how many times an acre can you do a hand count? Because we do it 144 times an acre, 12,000, 20,000 a day. Right. It's about on our UI seeing those trends. And if you see loss going up, you've got a problem. Make a change and it should go back down. And in peanuts, because it's much bigger than corn and soybeans, right? So the AI, never thought I'd say this, the AI became the easy part. But peanuts are bigger, so we can see them pretty good, and we're starting to also differentiate between and the regular peanut that'll be the shell with 2 peanuts inside versus like an aborted one that is just one. It almost looks like a perfect circle.
Yeah. Okay. So then you got it for cotton, corn, corn, and then wheat as well. And you're working on a few other ones. And so I read some of your case studies before coming on this, and the one that really stood out to me right now, and you're still going through the production phase, you're still trying to figure out how to make it work, and you're still doing your beta testing and all that kind of stuff. But in cotton, spotting trash in the field, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't know it was such a big problem. But the USDA and Cotton Inc., they were telling us how like this is a multi-million-dollar problem every year. And once they explained it to us, I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. But it started out by they literally have a machine, sort of like a Vision AI kind of, at a facility. It's in Tennessee somewhere, and it's like at the gin level, it's looking for blue particles in the white cotton. And I was like, what's blue? Walmart bags. That's what's blue. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, because there's thorns on the bowl when it opens in cotton,
Sure.
right? And so trash, wind, you got right, big open fields, blows across, the bag gets caught, maybe deteriorates a little bit, but then that gets sucked up into the harvester. Mylar balloons, just all bags, plastic bags, paper bags. That stuff gets pulled into the cotton harvester. It gets rolled up in the bale in the back, and now that could actually like transfer to other cotton bales when you get to the gin, right? So it gets mixed in, and it's a simple object detection, right? Looking forward on the harvester before the harvester gets there,
Sure.
and alerting the driver, hey, stop and get out. There's plastic bags, there's balloons, there's whatever it might be, some kind of trash, to pull it out of the way. We're also doing a yield monitoring loss, which is different, where it's not counting anything like kernels or like we do in corn and beans or peanuts. It's looking at a percentage of material, percentage of mass left behind, letting the operator know, hey, you've left maybe, I don't know, 20% of the cotton. I'm making it up. 20% of the cotton behind.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth, the diesel to go back and run that field again? Because they can run it again and try to pull more. And that's something they'd never had before. They just sort of go through and be like, I don't know, I guess it looks good, and that's it. But the trash in the front was another big one.
That's actually another thing I've never thought of either too. Because when you get done harvesting a cotton field, it looks like there's about as much cotton in the field still there as there is inside the machine. And
Right.
To your point, going back and taking a look at that, and are you getting everything that you can get out of that field, and letting you know, hey, this is how much there. You make the decision. That's a pretty innovative thing. I mean, you think about that a little bit. That's a that's a lot of crop left out there, a lot of money left out there that
Right.
You can make that decision, is the juice worth the squeeze? That's never been available before. That's a pretty good idea.
and cotton's a big crop down here in Georgia.
Sure.
And you're seeing that a lot of farmers, they outsource the cotton harvesting, because John Deere is the only one that makes a cotton harvester that I know of.
Yeah.
They're pretty expensive, right? It's not like others where you change the head. It's a specific machine, and they're really expensive. So the gin started taking over the harvesting. So they get contracted, they come out and they do the harvesting. So for them, it's even more important to look at garbage, trash material coming in. Are we getting it all? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. So talk a little bit about the hardware. I watched some of the videos you had on your website. Guys, go check this out. It's farmwave.io. Go check that out. And you can get all this information that we're talking about here. But when you're looking at the hardware that you have to mount on this stuff, talk a little bit about that hardware and kind of what that system looks like as a whole.
That's the worst part of our business. Like the hardware's, I never thought I would say this, right? When we started out building this project, this company, that the AI would be the easy part, but that's where we are today. The AI has actually become the easy part. The hardware is really difficult for us. We don't manufacture our own stuff. It's been off the shelf. We work with a really good camera company. We found a really good camera company that they do some other stuff in ag. I think their cameras are used by Sabanto and some others, but they've made a camera specifically for us, and that works well. But it's retrofit right now, so it works on any make, model combine, from the first one ever made to the last one that came off the line this morning. And everything in between. So it's completely standalone, which has its positives and negatives, right? It's that means anybody can buy it, put it on their own equipment, but you've got so many different make, model machines and combinations with headers, and then how do you get power and a lot of things that has not been in our wheelhouse, and that's been a challenging part. But It's 2 cameras on the back side of the header looking down at the ground, 1 camera in the rear of the machine, typically on the axle. Depends if you've got a cloth or a deer or case, but typically it's on the axle looking up at the spreader chopper area, and that's catching grain in flight before it hits the ground. And the header ones, as I said, are looking at the ground, counting grain on the ground. And they're taking pictures every 3 seconds, and they're telling you on a touchscreen display in the cab, about how much you're losing and where it's coming from on the machine.
Yeah.
They're not in perfect sync, so they're not all 3 taking a shot at the same time. They're just all every 3 seconds. So, it works at the edge, does not need to be connected to the internet. So all the numbers that you see are averages. They're all just averages and estimations. When we say you're losing about 2-3 bushels per acre, it's an average, because commodity prices are changing constantly. So that number that we have in there is just, the latest fixed number that was programmed in from when the system was online,
Right.
and pulled that data. So it's all estimates, and it's meant to be that way. More often than not, when farmers actually do the math, we're actually underreporting. It's usually more loss than we're actually reporting, because you also have, if you have a 50-foot head and we only have a camera on each side, each one taking a 3-foot by 3-foot area.
Yeah. There's a lot that's not.
Then there's more in the middle that we're not actually capturing, right? And
right.
The camera out the back, if it's only taking a picture every 3 seconds, well then, in between you're so it's underreporting, and it's usually more than what you see. But it installs in about hour and a half, 2 hours, depends. It's really just you run some cables, connect to power. There's multiple different ways. Some people have gotten bigger, big inverters, and they plug in that way. Other people have said, no, I'm just going to cut the cables and put this right into the power panel, which is the most stable, and that's the best way to do it. But hardware has been a challenge for us, right? We're very focused on the AI and the software.
Sure.
But a couple of years ago, people were like, "Well, prove that it works."
Right.
Well, how do you prove it without putting something out there to sense it, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So we did that, and then people were like, "Oh, well, I want one." So that's how we got here. But hardware sucks. So
you brought up one thing in there when you were talking about it. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, because I used to be about a year ago, I was on the, technology is now at a point now where it's going to start picking winners and losers, right? Because at the time there were retro kits out there, but they weren't necessarily that widely available. And maybe even 2 years ago, they weren't even, they were there, but they weren't wildly available like you see them now. And now I'm at the point where I think technology now is going to be at a point where just about anybody will be able to go get a retro kit of some sort, right? Whether that's whatever that is. And what you have here is that very thing. Like you just said, you can take it from the very first combine ever made to the one that just rolled off and everything in between. And it doesn't need to be any kind of crazy, whatever, canvas system or any of that kind of thing. You just need to be able to get power and make it work. I guess as you're looking at the future of FarmWave and how you start going down that path, how do you think your system and the retrofit kind of, phase, I don't want to call it a phase because it's not a phase, a retrofit kind of generation that we see coming down the pike here, how do you think that's going to fit into that, and where do you see it going from here?
I think that FarmWave is perfectly positioned right now for that market. We've heard in a lot of conversations, whether it be farmers, dealers, even the big OEMs, some of the big OEMs that are putting new technology into their machinery, their thought process is it's going to take us till we get our new tech rolled out into the marketplace via new machinery sales. It's going to take a decade or more. Right. And to your point, technology's at a point today where it's like you can get a retrofit and put it on there after the fact. We are working on harvest loss. We actually started doing stuff, like I said earlier, with Google Glass and then mobile devices, looking at disease, pest, weed pressure. So we have all of that still sits on the shelf that can be applied to sprayers. Now there's other people doing that in the sprayer in that market. but disease, pest, weed pressure, plant count, stand count. We did a case study on droplet size, drift. We've looked at things on planters, seed spacing, orientation as it goes in the ground. I think there's a long road ahead of us if we were going to try to tackle it all, and I don't know that we will. It's just sort of one thing at a time for us. But I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot more retrofit aftermarket technology to put on machinery. I think some of your latest acquisitions was just a couple weeks ago. Agco announced the 85% Trimble's ag assets that they acquired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Case with Raven, and they just announced acquiring somebody else in the specialty crop arena. So a lot of these retrofit things, I think, are certainly making their way into the marketplace, and especially in today's current economic climate, interest rates. I don't know that anybody's going out buying a brand new combine for the technology if they can retrofit an existing combine with it. We get asked a lot about, well, could you do this or could you do that or this or that with your AI? The answer is just about always, yeah. How much time and money do you have, right? I mean, I think that's where tech is as a whole today, not just agriculture, just as a whole. We can probably make something happen. But it's just, what's it going to take to get there? And is there value in it?
And that's the part of it was what you're doing. Is that juice worth the squeeze at the end of the day when you really have that conversation about the time and the effort that you're putting in there? And I think that you brought up a good point too. As I look at technology, you have some companies that have been widely versed in technology for a long time, like John Deere, for example. They've been building their technology portfolio for the past 20 or 30 years, depending on when you want to count what starts with what. But as you take a look at the overall spectrum now, with the way robotics and AI and all these different functions, machine learning, these different things all start coming into play. If a company really wanted to jump in and take off and run, kind of like to your point, there's a lot of acquisitions that can be made to where they can be on a similar path, a similar level as some of these, portfolios that we've seen being built. And as you take a look at like the Trimble situation or the Raven situation, and I'll use Raven as a good example of that, where Raven's at from an AI perspective and from an automation perspective. As soon as they get the hard part about all this is that once you start getting all the ingredients to make the stew that you want to eat, you got to put it all together, and then you got to get it incorporated, and you got to start then sending it back out to the masses. Raven and Trimble both are a very common thing in the ag space.
Yeah,
that's not, I guess, anything new. The only difference is the dealer channel and how the dealer channel works with what's out there, and I think that's going to be the stalling point when you start looking at how does this stuff, when these acquisitions are made, how are these, how do you get that stuff disseminated out, and how do you build a culture around, this is that, and I think that's the tough part. But once you start diving into that and you start going and making these acquisitions, you're getting yourself to be on a similar playing field to some of these really developed out things that you're seeing. And I think, Craig, as I look at your product, I see that's one of those things that are out there. I mean, you're basically doing the same thing that, for example, like the camera systems on inside of a Deere combine, when you're looking at how it's adjusting for trash and those kind of things, and it's automatically adjusting those componentries inside there. You're doing the same thing. And I guess the other question I had for you was, from a camera perspective, like you're talking about your 50-foot head thing, is there a limit to the number of cameras that you can put on your system?
Yeah, it's 10 right now.
10.
But those are just hardware limitations at the moment.
Sure.
If somebody were to come along and say, hey, we wanted to acquire FarmWave and we wanted it for the AI, or the software, but wanted to throw our hardware overboard and integrate it into their machine. Yeah, you can totally do that. Like you could, we think we have pretty good cameras. It would be dependent upon what kind of cameras they're looking to use. But everything else is, yeah, you could just throw our stuff overboard and integrate it into your stuff. So, and I think that's where it'll go, as if we see acquisitions like you said, Casey, in the space. That's where it's going to go. It's okay. So and so acquired this company. Now they need to integrate their tech into the rest of their tech stack, so that it all works together. And it's totally doable. I think it just takes a little bit of time to make all that happen.
Yeah. So this is my last question for you here, and this is my get your crystal ball out and tell me what the future looks like. But as you're looking at AI, I mean, AI to me is I never really took much interest into it until ChatGPT came around, and you could ask questions and it would just come at you with all the different stuff, and you're looking at stuff like See and Spray and those similar technologies that are out there and how it's using that machine learning function to go from there. As you look at AI right now, I mean, obviously there's no limitations, right? You can I can't see anything out there yet that points as, hey, this is the limit of AI, right? I think so. As you're looking at AI and how it goes into farming, and then we start looking at autonomous machinery and those kind of things, what's your vision of that future look like for AI in farming?
I think it will be very prominent, because we all know that succession, labor, all a problem in agriculture and other industries, but certainly in agriculture. And so this is a great opportunity for AI to assist. AI assisted technologies. You're right. There's really no limitations on where we could go with different AI in agriculture. But I think expectations need to be set. It's not perfect. Even ChatGPT is not perfect.
No,
it came out and then Microsoft announces they're putting all this money in order or whatever, and the next thing you know, the internet is just full of people trying to punch holes through it and break it, and they ask it very simple questions that it got wrong, right? And it happens. If your expectation of AI is that somebody cooks up some if this then that statement and it's perfect, man, you got to reset your expectations, right? See and Spray, harvest loss, whatever it is, we got a ways to go before it's perfect, and it's at a level of accuracy where it's fully autonomous, where we can step away as humans. I think today you still need to babysit it, right? Because even our stuff, we've told people all the time, it's not perfect. You should be looking at that monitor. That's why we put the graph in the UI, is because it's watch that graph. If your counts are going up and up and up, you have a problem, either left or right side of the header or rear of the machine. Make some adjustments and watch it go down. If instead they're going tapping on every single picture going, oh, well, I count 18 kernels, it only counted 16, it's wrong. We never said it was going to be 100% like that.
Right.
Right. And I think that's an expectation that needs to be set. So I think we're looking at, for the next decade or so, it's really, assisted AI. That's what it is. It's assisting us in those tasks. But again, right, we do 144 or more counts per acre, 12,000 to 20,000 counts in a day. Nobody's doing that by hand, right? So that's how it's assisting you, because you don't have to stop now. You don't ever have to stop and get out to count or drop pans or whatever. You just go. And we've got some customer testimonials of people who have done just that, change the fan speed, do this or that. Now, if it's a mechanical change on the head or something, sure, you may have to stop and get out and make that mechanical change. But as you said, getting to a point in the future where now the AI can make those adjustments for you. But you still have that feedback loop to the operator to know that, hey, I'm making this change or that change because it's all X, Y, Z. And I don't think anybody has or will have a perfect AI for quite some time, or maybe ever, because we as humans are not perfect, right? It's like if you were looking for FarmWave harvest loss detection to be perfect, then why do we even have farm machinery? Because there's not a single combine out there that gets every kernel. There's not a
Right.
planter out there that puts every seed in the ground at the right spacing and orientation
Right.
that you want it. No sprayer gets just the plant perfectly every single time,
Mhm.
right? So if you were to take all that away and we went back and did everything by hand, guess what? Humans make errors too. No
Yeah.
one would pick, you have 10,000 people in the field, go back and look, you're going to find kernels on the ground.
Mhm.
There's just nothing is perfect, right? So I think whether it's agriculture, manufacturing, all kinds of industries, sure, we want to strive for perfection and make things as accurate as possible. But I think all of that is still in the works, because the data and the intelligence to make the I portion of AI, right, the artificial, it's all
Mhm.
derived from human intelligence.
Right.
So how many thousands of years do we have to go back from our existence of human intelligence and get that into machines? And we as humans still disagree with each other. So who's to say what's right or wrong, right?
Right.
I just don't think it's going to be a level of perfection. So
Yeah.
I think it's all about AI assisted and those levels of autonomy where you can have it help when there's labor shortages and so on, which is a funny thing because everybody was so worried for the longest time, like AI is going to take my job. What job? Nobody shows up to work anymore. Like nobody's working. So
Mhm.
what job are you worried about AI taking? Like,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I think, even Chat GPT, yeah, you can have it write lines of code for you and stuff, but you still need somebody to do QA. Did it get
Right.
the code, the lines of code right? Like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. You still have to, because when I'll mess around with my kids and stuff, and stuff will pop up there all the time, and it'll be
Right.
about every 10, every whatever 25 or 30 things we do, you get that one like this. What is this? And then
Yeah.
the rest of it's all right, but it's that one or two things that you pop up that are just like wildly wrong that you're trying to figure
Yeah.
out, or
And-
it does, doesn't want to answer the question. You know what I mean?
Right.
Those kind of things too.
And that's just on something like ChatGPT, right? So
Yeah.
in agriculture, the importance level is even higher, right?
Sure.
You're looking
Yep.
at harvest loss or putting down fertilizer or spraying or whatever. There's real money involved to farmers. So we got to make sure that we try to get it right. And I think this is why it's going to be a long time before we see a lot of AI in healthcare, right? Because now you've upped the risk and the stakes.
Mhm.
Something happens in agriculture and a plant dies. Something happens in healthcare and could be a person.
Right.
So there's just a good ways to go, in my opinion.
Yep. I agree with you. Craig, I love this conversation, man. I could talk about this stuff all day. So if folks want to reach out to you, get more information about what you're doing, what's the easiest way to get hold of you and over at FarmWave?
There's a contact form on our website. You fill that out. I'm on Twitter. I'm not very active. I'm really on Twitter for agriculture. So
Right.
you
Yeah.
can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn, but hit us up on our website, fill out the form, and we'd love to help in any way we can, or talk about what we can do for
Right on.
for farmers.
That is farmwave.io, right? That's the best.
Yep.
That's the best place to go. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So check that out, farmwave.io, and you can get all the information there. So Craig, appreciate you taking time, man.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC, LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast. Go see the video version of this over at the YouTube channel, which is Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel, and see all things Moving Iron related at Moving Iron LLC. I'm Casey Seymour with Craig Ganssle. Smooth Iron folks, out.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hardworking people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here.